Hello again and welcome back to our course on Access 2013 Advanced. In the last couple of sections we've been looking at some of the features of the student details form and some of the ways that you can use macro code to add rich functionality to your Access applications. We've got a couple more specific cases to look at in this section, and we're going to start with this control, the one up here next to where it says go to. Go to itself is just a label, but this control is a very useful one. So I've actually opened the student form having selected the student Carl Leclerc. Watch what happens if I click on that drop down. What I get is a list of the students in the database. I have student name, email address, home phone. I can scroll through the list. Note how where there isn't an email address it says unknown, and having found a particular student, if I click on that I jump to that student. Now that's a pretty complex kind of control, a very useful control, and what we're going to look at first in this section is exactly how that control works. Now one of the first things to notice about that control is that it says it is unbound, which you might find rather surprising to think that it's not bound to any particular record source. But when you find out how it works, I hope you'll see why. Now let's click on the property sheet, go to the data page. There's no control source as such, but there is a row source, and the row source is specifically this query. Let's take a look at that query. This query is fetching 4 fields from the student's extended query: ID, student name, email address and home phone. Of course the last 3 of those were the ones that we saw when we clicked on the drop down on the form. Notice with the ID field that there is a criterion specified, and the criterion specified is we're looking for students whose ID is not equal to, now we've got the NZ function again, form in square brackets, exclamation mark, and then in square brackets ID. We normally say when we read out the exclamation mark, a lot of people say bang, so that's form bang ID. And what that means is NZ form bang ID means look at the form ID, so in this case the current ID of the student displayed on the student details form. If it's not null, use that. If it is null, use 0. So what we're saying is we want all of the students with IDs not equal to the ID of the currently displayed student. So you may not have noticed, but when we actually clicked on that drop down, the one student who wasn't in the list was Carl Leclerc. So the row source, which is basically the list of values that goes into that drop down list, is everybody except Carl Leclerc. If we did this on the same form when we were adding a new student, the criterion would be ID not equal to 0, and therefore we'd get all of the available students. The other thing to notice about this query is that the resulting list of students is sorted in ascending order of student name, and student name, as you may recall, is the concatenation of the first name and last name, so this list will be in first name last name sequence. If you've populated a combo box before, you'll know pretty much how to format what's shown in the combo box. We're actually selecting 4 fields here. The first of them is ID, and the ID is the one we're going to use to find the selected student. But we don't actually want to show the IDs in the list because it just confuses users seeing those numbers. They're internal numbers that aren't really of interest to the users of this Access application. So let me just skip now to the Format tab, and in the Format tab just go down to column count. We know that we've got 4 columns of data in the combo box, column count 4. We specify now the column widths, and the first column width is 0 inches, then 2, then 2, then 2, which means that the first column, the ID column, is effectively invisible because we've set the width at 0 inches. And the next property there, column heads, we say yes, which means that we'll actually see those column heads. But if I now switch back to the Data tab again, a very important setting, the bound column, the one whose value is actually going to be selected when a user makes a selection from that list, is column 1. So although the user can't see the IDs because we've given that column a width of 0, it's the column 1 value, the ID value, that is actually selected when a user selects from that list. So that explains where that list comes from in the combo box, but there's more to this story yet, and we now need to look at the Event tab because there are actually 2 embedded macros. And the first embedded macro that I want to look at is the onGotFocus macro. Now the GotFocus event occurs when a control on a form gets the focus. So when you actually, if you like, give that some attention, when you go to that particular control, click on that drop down arrow, the control's got the focus, and this embedded macro is fired. The macro begins with a fairly routine on error go to next command, and then we have an if statement. Now the if statement is a good one to understand, and this particular piece of code is a very reusable piece of code in fact. Screen.ActiveForm identifies the form that has the focus, and screen.ActiveForm.name is the name of the form that currently has the focus. Now we expect that to be the current form, so in effect this is what I might call a sort of belt and braces check in a way. It's basically saying that if the form that's got the focus is the form that I'm on, that this piece of code is on, then requery the active control. The active control is the control that's got the focus, and when we actually do a requery, we looked at requery earlier on without a control name which requeried a whole form. If you put in a control name as we've got here, then you're basically saying requery the control with this name, that's the name of the current control on the current screen. And what that means is that when you click on that drop down, Access requeries, it runs that row source query that we saw a little while ago again, just if you like to freshen it up to make sure it's up to date in case anything has happened since it was last used. So that basically makes sure that the list that you're being shown when you click on the drop down is completely up to date. That's a very useful little macro. So we're looking here at events that we haven't discussed before. Let's just have a little recap up to this point. We've got this control here, this Unbound control, a combo box. When it gets the focus, a query, which basically is the row source for the contents of the combo box, is requeried because of the onGotFocus embedded macro. And then the user can scroll through that list. It's a list of 4 fields. The first one, which is the one that's going to be used, is invisible because the width of that field in the row is 0. But when the user makes a selection, another event is fired. In fact, a sequence of events is fired, and one of those events is the after update event, which basically means that the selection within this combo box is updated, and the after update event causes another embedded macro to be fired. Let's look at that embedded macro next. Now again, much of this macro is pretty straightforward, but the parts that aren't are probably going to seem quite strange, but again you're learning techniques here that you're going to be able to reuse, and that will help you to overcome various other difficulties when you're trying to develop macros for your Access applications. Now first of all, let me go right down to about halfway down until the unusual things start to happen. And the first unusual thing is the setTempVar command. Now we looked at variables in VBA. You also have variables, temporary variables in macros, and you can give them names. This particular temporary variable here is called active control value. And this macro command set temp var active control value equals screen.activeControl will actually give the value in the active control. Now of course at the moment that is the combo box, so it's the ID of the student that we want to go to. Now we're storing that because in order to make all of this work we need to clear the value that's in the active control. And the next command, set value, sets the value in the active control to null. So basically we've saved the ID of the student we want in the temporary variable active control value, but we're clearing that value out of the combo box where it was stored, and we'll be putting that back to null before we move on to the next stage. Now you may be wondering why this set value command here has got this little warning triangle next to it. I'm going to bring up the action catalog for a moment and explain something important again. Next to the Action Catalog button in the Show Hide group on the Design tab for Macro Tools, there is a Show All Actions button. And in fact, if you look at the Action Catalog on the right at the moment, System Commands, there are 4 of them, User Interface Commands, there are about 8 or 9 of them. That is not the set of all available macro actions. If you click on Show All Actions, the list is actually considerably longer. And if I look now at, say, System Commands, I've got several additional ones, and they usually have these warning symbols. These are the dangerous actions, the ones that you only want to use if you're being very careful about what you're doing. And set value is one of those. Furthermore, these commands, it's very important that you only execute them in a case where the current project is trusted. Hence the if current project dot is trusted check here. So if you're going to set the value in one of the screen controls back to null in this case, or to set it to a specific value, that's one of these more dangerous commands, the ones that carry health warnings with them if you like. You can see the list of all of the commands by Show All Actions, but with some of them it's important that you realize that they're quite dangerous commands and that you should do this kind of check with them as a matter of course if current project dot is trusted. Relatively speaking, the rest of this is quite straightforward, even though we haven't seen 2 or 3 of these commands before. First of all, if form.filterOn, that means if the current form has got a filter on, bear in mind that the student details form you could have applied a filter, and therefore if you try to go to the selected student, that student may not be included within the filtered record set. So if it's on, run menu command, and the command to run is remove filter sort. So that will remove any filter that has been applied. Removing any filter from the underlying record set for the student details form will make sure that the student we're looking for is actually going to be there. Next we come to the search for record command, which searches an object for a record based on a criterion. So in this case what we're going to be looking at, we're going to be looking for the first record that satisfies this where condition. I don't need to explain where conditions again, but I do need to explain this thing, temp vars bang active control value. Temp vars is basically the set of all the variables that are declared and accessible for this macro. We have saved one temp variable, active control value, so we're basically saying the where condition is ID equals, and it's the value that we stored earlier on in the macro. That's the ID of the student that we need to go to. So what access will do will take us to that student, assuming that all's well, the student's there, nobody's deleted the student while we've been thinking about it. And then we have remove temp var. It's just a tidying up exercise to remove active control value from the set of temporary variables. And there we are, we should be looking at that particular student value. Now I'm not going to take you through actually running that, selecting a student, seeing it happen. I'm sure you can try that yourself, but hopefully you've learned a lot more in this section about the use of macros. And in the next section we've got 2 or 3 other special cases to look at as well. So more to learn and more things to find out about to really improve your Access applications. So I'll see you in the next section.